Departure of French troops from Africa, Macron publicly denies and humiliates Alassane Ouattara. In a striking demonstration of the true balance of power, French President Emmanuel Macron publicly contradicted his Ivorian counterpart, Alassane Ouattara, exposing the flaws in his sovereignty-centered rhetoric. During his speech on December 31, 2024, Ouattara announced the withdrawal of French forces from Côte d'Ivoire, claiming it was a sovereign decision by his government. He stated, "Dear brothers, dear sisters, we can be proud of our army whose modernization is now effective. It is within this framework that we decided on the concerted and organized withdrawal of French forces in Côte d'Ivoire." However, on January 6, 2025, Emmanuel Macron made remarks that cast doubt on this version of events. Speaking at an annual foreign policy conference, he asserted that France had decided to reorganize its military presence in Africa, specifying that some African states had been reluctant about this withdrawal. He declared, "And sometimes you had to push them. But it is not because we are polite and correct and reorganize ourselves that it should be turned against us by saying, they are driven out of Africa." These remarks challenged the tyrant Ouattara's statements and revealed that the withdrawal of French troops from Côte d'Ivoire was more a French initiative than an Ivorian sovereign decision. This situation highlights a disconnect between the official Ivorian narrative and the strategic decisions made by France. In reality, Alassane Ouattara appears to have complied with a decision imposed by Paris, later attempting to frame it as a sovereign act. This is not the first time Alassane Ouattara has been caught in a blatant lie or manipulation. During the post-electoral crisis of 2020, he assured the international community that his third term was necessary for the country's stability, even though this decision sparked massive opposition and deadly violence. In truth, this additional term blatantly violated the Ivorian constitution, but the Ivorian despot managed to impose his narrative through tight control of local media and a notable lack of response from some international partners. Furthermore, the handling of corruption scandals at the top levels of the Ivorian state is another glaring example of Alassane Ouattara's persistent strategy of concealment. The appointments of his relatives to key positions, such as his son-in-law Loic Follerex and his niece Massire Touré, suggest a noticeable favoritism he tries to downplay in public opinion. This habit of manipulating the truth for personal gain is emblematic of a governance style marked by opacity and submission to foreign interests. Macron's remarks are not just a rebuttal of Ouattara's statements, they amount to a public humiliation. By stating that some African heads of state had to be pushed to accept military reorganizations, Macron implicitly refers to leaders like Ouattara, unable to oppose externally imposed decisions. This situation reflects the dependence of certain African elites on former colonial powers, a reality the Ivorian head of state desperately tries to conceal. Moreover, Macron emphasized that the withdrawal of French troops was a result of a pragmatic reorganization rather than a request from the concerned states. This statement reinforces the notion that Ouattara never had real control over this decision, contrary to what he sought to portray. This gap between facts and Ouattara's rhetoric further undermines his image as a sovereignist leader. Beyond the personal humiliation for Alassane Ouattara, this affair carries deep political and symbolic implications for Côte d'Ivoire. It highlights the current regime's inability to defend national sovereignty against foreign interests. While the Ivorian people aspire to true independence and a break from neo-colonial practices, this episode once again reveals that their president acts more as a compliant intermediary for foreign powers than as a defender of national interests. Additionally, this situation weakens Côte d'Ivoire's credibility on the international stage. How can a country hope to position itself as a regional power when it cannot control the narratives surrounding strategic decisions such as the presence of foreign military forces on its soil? Ultimately, this episode confirms that Alassane Ouattara's rhetoric is often closer to propaganda than reality. Far from being a sovereignist and independent leader, he appears as a weak actor in a political game dominated by external forces. Chris Yapi does not lie. Find Chris Yapi on his 2 YouTube channels, his Rumble channel, his TikTok, X, Instagram, VK and Threads accounts.